In this video, we'll explore one of SmartAnim's most powerful tools. The UI panel lets you create custom user interfaces with dynamic controls, making it easy to interact with character rigs and manage scene elements in a more intuitive and efficient way. To create a UI panel, let's go to the Create panel, Helpers, UI panel, and click somewhere in the viewport. Inside this helper, we're going to have stored all the UI controls that you are going to use to animate the rig. You can even have several UI panels, each one with their own set of controls. To start adding the controls, we're going to access the UI panel manager. You can also access this window by going to the Graph Editors menu and selecting UI panel manager. We're going to start with some pickers. And for that, let's create some spheres here in the scene. Now, select all the spheres and right-click here, select Add, and click on Selected Objects. We have now created pickers for every sphere that we had selected, and we have also entered the transformation mode. In this mode, we can just move and scale these controls as we desire. We can also change the color here and give it a name as well. But in order to interact with the controls, let's right-click here and disable the transform mode. Now, every time that I click in one control, the respective object in the scene is selected. Let's select all the spheres again. Right-click here, click on Add, and click on Group Selection. This time we have only one picker, and you can use it to select all the objects at the same time. We can also, with the sphere selected, click this time on Visibility. With this, we can hide and unhide all the objects assigned to this control. We can change the name as well. Now let's continue over here. The picker option is almost the same that we did before, but just one picker without assigning any object by default. And here in action, we have this control. If I turn off Transform, every time that I click on the control, a Max script action can be executed. We can define the script by going to Set Script here. We have this dialog box that is very similar to the script controller. We can write the script here, and we can also create variables over here exactly the same as you would with the script controller. Let's write a basic example. Now, every time that I click on this button, we have the sphere moving to the 0 position, but you can also make any complex set of actions, anything that you can imagine and that you can write on Max script. Let's continue with the toggle button. With this button, you have a control that changes state every time that you click on it, and you can connect this state to any Boolean parameter on the scene. You can access the Boolean value by clicking on Show in Track View. Here's the track. It is actually stored in the same UI panel object that we created earlier. You can connect this to any float controller in the scene using a script controller or the SmartAnim float connection, for example. Now let's go back to the manager, and this time let's create an image control. Let's select an image file over here, and now we have this image that we can use as a background. We can move it with this arrow and resize it as we want. Very useful for making our interface more intuitive in case we want to make a face rig, for example. And now, let's create a group control. With this, we can organize our interface a lot better. It is now time to play around with some sliders and spinners. With those, you can animate elements in the scene directly, like morph targets or reverse foot parameters, for example, or any other float parameter that you want. We have horizontal slider, vertical slider, diagonal slider, and 2D slider. You can position them as you want. Let's turn off the transform mode. And here you can see how I can interact with these controls. Down here you can see how the value changes depending on the position of the knob. In the case of the 2D slider, there are two float values, one for the x-axis and the other for the y-axis. We can also access those parameters by clicking on Show in Track View. There you have it. You can also connect them to other elements on the scene using script controllers or the SmartAnim float connection. Let's go back and create some spinners. Now, the main difference with the sliders is that you can change the value by just dragging instead of moving a knob in a similar way that the standard 3D S-Max spinners work. This allows you to have values that don't have upper or lower limits. You can play around with the colors as well if you want. Now, if we go to slider spinner properties, we can access these parameters. You can change the limits, the default value, as well as other properties over here. If you want to get inspired even more about how to build your own custom rig, let's take a look at how the UI panel is being implemented with the SmartAnim rig system. Here you get two UI panels, one for the body and one for the face. In the body, we get all these pickers. With those, you can select all the control helpers that are used for animation. It can be a lot easier to select them here in this panel than doing it directly on the viewport. You also have these sliders that you can use to control the different parameters in the rig, like IKFK blend value, for example. If we go to the face UI panel in a similar fashion, we have these pickers for all the control helpers in the face. But in case we're using morph targets for the face, we can have a different setup. Let's create one over here. As you can see here now, we have all these sliders that we can use to animate the morph targets more efficiently in a more intuitive way. All of these sliders are connected to this modifier that you can use to assign the morph targets later. And that's the conclusion to the SmartAnim UI panel tutorial. Start exploring and elevate your animation projects today.